As part of BT's sponsorship of the National Theatre, I know you filmed Sir Ian McKellen. Can you tell me about it, please?
Okay, so we were making a website for the National Theatre, and specifically for an educational site called Stagework, which the National Theatre had set up. Now, in the UK, there's something called the National Curriculum, which is like a list of kind of very strict guidelines about what school children have to learn. And 13 to 14-year-olds have to learn one of a number of set speeches. And unsurprisingly, a lot of those speeches are by Shakespeare. So, working with the people at Stagework, we decided that we were going to create a site which would tell school kids everything they needed to know about one speech by Shakespeare, which was specified by the National Curriculum, which was the "Now is the winter of our discontent" speech from the opening of Shakespeare's Richard III. Okay, so then the question is, who could we get to talk about that speech? So Sir Ian McKellen was still, and is still now, a very clear character in the minds of most British 13 and 14-year-olds. You know, they know Sir Ian mostly as Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, but also as Magneto in the X-Men. So the people at Stagework talked to the people at the top of the National Theatre, and Nick Heitner, the director of the National Theatre, very kindly wrote to Sir Ian saying, you know, "Dear Sir Ian, would you mind giving us a couple of hours of your time and talking to kids about the opening speech of Shakespeare's Richard III?" Because in addition to being Gandalf and Magneto, some of you may also be aware that Sir Ian is, you know, the greatest Shakespearean actor of his generation, the greatest living Shakespearean actor, a guy who's just done the most incredible work with Shakespeare in his life, and who also created an amazing film of Richard III, which is, well, in my opinion, certainly the best film of Richard III that exists. So he's not just a great Shakespearean actor and someone very well known to our target audience, but he knows the opening speech of Richard III intimately. So, but not only that, Sir Ian, as he's said in a number of his interviews, you know, he likes the radical, he likes new things, he likes unusual things. And so when Nick Heitner wrote to him about doing something interactive, he said yes. So we had 2 hours with Sir Ian, and in that time we generated more than an hour of edited footage, which is, of course, entirely a tribute to his, you know, incredible skills at speaking and in kind of articulating, you know, what he felt about Shakespeare. Now, one thing that people quite often ask is, how was the script developed? So the script for the interactive question and answer section was developed using a technique I use with a lot of my interviews, which is I look online and in books for interesting and slightly surprising things that people have said about whatever the subject of the interview might be. So in Sir Ian's case, I found an interview where he'd said there is a link between X-Men and Shakespeare, because Shakespeare, you know, created stories as we know them today and modern characters and so on. So okay, I thought, well, that's an interesting statement. Let's turn that round and turn that into a question. So if you go onto the site, you can see that there's a question, which is, you know, do you think there's a link between Shakespeare and Lord of the Rings or X-Men? You click that and he'll say, well, it's an interesting question, what do you think? And if you click on yes, he'll say, yes, I think you're right. Shakespeare's a marvellous storyteller, blah, 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 blah. If you click on no, he'll go, oh, I don't agree with you. Shakespeare's a marvellous, and so it goes on. With all my interactive video stuff, I'm always trying to kind of recreate a natural real-world experience. So there we're trying to recreate a conversation. It's not really like a conversation, because obviously you can't ask Sir Ian anything you like, but it is like a conversation to the extent that you have to think about what he's talking about. You can't just kind of blob out and, you know, you have to respond. If you don't, he tells you, oh, come on, I haven't got it all day. Do answer the question. So you have to answer the question, you have to think about what he's talking about, and then the person speaking has to respond to your views to some extent. So, while it's not completely like a conversation. It is to that extent. But I think, and so the piece has done very well, and it got nominated for a BAFTA, an Emmy, and 3 Webbies, 4 Webbies. Anyway, a lot of Webbies. And and to some extent that's, because of the format and all that sort of thing, but also, of course, it's to the quality of the person speaking. And I mean, this is the thing that you have to remember with an incredible speaker like Sir Ian McKellen, is that just what he does with words is just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I mean, one thing is, it's rather slow. The way he's speaking is actually quite slow, but it's so engrossing, and it just has this amazing sort of magnetic energy. And so, yes, so I mean, it obviously was an incredible opportunity to be able to work with someone like that. And I think the format let him really shine. There's no interviewer in the way, there's no bits and pieces in the way. It is kind of like you're talking to him for an hour or so about one of the greatest works in English literature. So it was a great opportunity to be able to do that.